We now are going to deal with our topic today is adoption. Adoption. And he will make you like. Um, when we look at the Torah portion, we typically just go kind of through a chapter at a time. But I think this week I actually wanted to kind of get down to 48. So we'll kind of give a little overview of 46 and 47, and the meat of what we're going to deal with is in chapter 48. But I didn't want to just skip over, so I did, kind of have a little overview for the chapter, which we'll go through now. And if anybody has any questions, comments, you could put them in the comments section over here. Questions, comments are welcome, right? Okay, so just a few highlights to go over with 46, with chapter 46. First of all, we see another example when we look in chapter 46, and we'll look at the verse. Another example of in the scripture when we see that Israel's name, Jacob's name, was changed to Israel. But even though we see that it was changed, there's many places all over the place, and this is a exceptional example because even in the same verse we see both names being used. So it caused me to think about that. I talked about this before. This is something that reminds us of the transformation of not only Israel, the man, that is Jacob, but also the nation of Israel, and also you and I as individuals. Okay, so let's read. Let's see here. One of you got which one of you guys gonna read for us here? Okay, I see Elder Kristen muted himself. Except I can't hear you though.
Can you hear me?
Oh yeah, I hear you now. Just talk loud.
Elohim. Okay. Oh, am I reading now?
Yeah, go ahead. That verse right there.
And Elohim spoke to Israel in the visions of the night and said, Jacob, Jacob. And he said, here I am.
Okay, very good. So as I said, when we look at this verse, right, it says, and Elohim spoke to Israel, and then when he speaks, he says Jacob, Jacob. He says Jacob, right? And so when we look at that, when we think about Jacob, Jacob is kind of exemplary of the carnal man. Okay. Jacob is the supplanter, right? And when we're talking about the idea of types and shadows and spiritual significances, right? So when we think about Jacob from that perspective, again, that's the carnal man, right? The supplanter. Yaakov, which what this says right here, Yaakov, means to take hold of the heel, taking hold of the heel, supplanter, a layer of snares, right? If I'm going to grab your heel, I don't know what other reason that I would grab your heel would be unless I'm trying to trip you, right? I'm trying to block your your progression, right? Supplant, to trip up the hills, right? Supplant, down, remove or displace by stratagem. That's like a strategy. If you displace by strategizing something, like coming up with this intricate plan, right? To displace or to take place of. That's what supplanter means. That's what a supplanter would do, right? And so that's what the very name of Jacob means, right? And so sometimes when we look at the scriptures and we see where, especially here, where we see both names being used, it's just something that can cause us to think about something, and potentially is there something behind the reason for this kind of multi usage of the name. Okay, where's my cursor at? Oh, here it goes. Okay, so Israel, we can say, is the spiritual mind, right? Israel contends with Elohim and prevails. Can you read this verse here?
And he said, your name shall no longer be called Jacob, but Israel, for you have struggled with God and with men and have prevailed.
Okay, so when we look at this, that was let's see, that was Genesis 32 and 28. When we see when when Jacob's name was changed back then, right? It was changed, and then it gives you kind of a definition almost for the name, right? Struggling. You have struggled with Elohim, right? And so when we look at Israel, he is a contender, right? He's a soldier of Elohim. The Yisrael right here, Yisrael is kind of a compound thing from Shara, and El mixed together, the contender, the soldier of Elohim, right? So he, being Israel, fights for that which is spiritual. And that's what happened. That's exactly what happened, right? When he was fighting with the angel, right? He wanted that blessing. He was fighting for something that was spiritual as opposed to the carnal. So when we look at Jacob, it goes back and forth. So we see where it gives us the picture of the back and forth that we experience, where we exist kind of in this carnal reality, when we kind of think about things from a carnal perspective, and then we kind of dip into the spiritual side, and we just going back and forth. And we see how in the scripture where we see that with Jacob, with Israel, and again, it's something that we're able to look at in ourselves and recognize, that back and forth that exists within us, right? And so verse 3, can you read this verse here for us?
And he said, I am Elohim of your father. Do not be afraid to go down to Mizraim, for I shall make you there into a great nation.
Okay, so when we get back into Genesis 46 over here, and we see first the Most High calls out to Israel and calls him Jacob, and then he says, do not be afraid. But we don't have any anything that tells us about Jacob being afraid. But we see the Most High speaking to these unknown situations that exist within Jacob, right? So in the context, I think we see the contrast because perhaps there is doubt that's present, right? So, or why else is the Most High, offering this reassurance? He's on his way down to Mizraim, but it's necessary for him to the Most High to offer this reassurance to him. So perhaps there was some doubt that was present, right? So the word there that that I highlighted there, do not be afraid. In the Hebrew, it means to fear not, right? Fear not. However, doubt can be assumed because of the fact that we're looking at the Most High offering his this encouragement in a time where we from the outside, we can't see what's actually going on, right? So there we go. It's a little bit of a there we go. Okay. Can you read that right there for us?
Without faith, it is impossible to please him. For he who comes to Elohim must first believe that he is, and that he is a rewarder of those who seek him.
Okay, very good. That was Hebrews 11:6. And so when we look at this verse over here, we talk about the fact that we, without faith, and if we're in a place that is not of faith, if we're not walking in faith, it is impossible actually to please Elohim in that state. And so when we think about fear, when we think about fear, that's called doubt, right? If we're in a place of doubt, if we're in a place where we're doubting the ability for the Most High to be able to keep us, and particularly in a situation where, Jacob is on this mission. He's going down to meet up with his long lost son. He already said, if he's to know and see his son alive, there's no even reason for him to live anymore. Like this is the greatest thing that could possibly happen to him, and to potentially think that fear potentially or doubt is blocking him. The Most High knows what's going on inside of him, and he says, don't worry, fear not. I'm going to take you down here to Egypt, and I'm going to make you great in this place where you're going. Okay, so that just was kind of a little overview of what was going on in the 46th chapter. In 47, we see that Pharaoh's Jacob, as they get down into Egypt, and the family of Joseph, where they are given land, they're given jobs in the land. Yeah, they're able to receive immediate blessings from their connection with Joseph. And then we see this, right? We see this when we go through the chapter. We also see that the famine continues. However, because of the wisdom of Joseph, all that are with Joseph and Pharaoh prosper as a result of this planning that preceded the famine, right? That they had all of the goods and stuff stored up. People was running out. So then they kept on coming up and buying stuff from Pharaoh and Joseph and them, and then they was running out of money, and then they was handing over their goods, and then they was handing over their land, and then they was handing over their very souls, just selling their own selves in order to maintain. So as far as Egypt and Joseph and all that was there around them, they all prospered during this time as this famine was going on. And again, all because of the wisdom that Joseph was given to properly plan out, how they were supposed to get through all of this in the first place. Okay. And so, and as it goes to the end of the chapter, the end of chapter 46, 47, we see that Israel, he's getting old, he's growing weary. He sees that his death, he's at death's door. And he wants to just make sure that he is buried back in the land, back in the burial place that he had bought already, and not be buried in Egypt, which brings us up to Genesis 48, where we deal with what we want to talk about today, which is adoption. Okay, and you shall be like, and he will make you like. I should have fixed that right there. Okay, so this chapter gives a couple very important concepts that I wanted to go over. Scripture shows us these things through the meeting and the blessing of the sons of Joseph. Now, as we go through this, we will also see an important component that is included in the gospel. So we will be able to see we'll also be able to see how this chapter points us to the blessings that we receive from Yeshua, which, if you didn't guess, adoption is the said gospel blessing. Okay, so let's start by going through some of these verses. So can you just begin to read these verses here for us?
And after these events, it came to be that it was said to Joseph, see, your father is sick. And he took with him his two sons, Manasseh and Ephraim. And Jacob was told, see, your son Joseph is coming to you. And Israel strengthened himself and sat up on the bed.
Okay.
And Jacob said to Joseph, El Shaddai appeared to me at Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me and said to me, see, I am making you fruitful and shall increase you and make of you an assembly of peoples, and give this land to your seed after you as an everlasting possession.
Okay. All right. So when we look in verse 5, we see this. Hold on. Did we see verse 5?
Nope. We only went to verse 4.
Okay. So we're able to see in verse 5 this curious thing. Oh, here we go, right here. Here's verse 5. I knew it was there somewhere. Can you read verse 5?
And now your two sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you in the land of Mizraim before I came to you in Mizraim, are mine. As Reuben and Simeon, they are mine.
Okay, there we go. There's verse 5, and there's our curious thing that's going on here with Jacob and his grandsons, right? Where he says, and now your two sons, he's talking to Joseph, your two sons, he says, Ephraim and Manasseh, who were born to you, they're your sons, they was born to you in the land of Mizraim before I came to you. He says all this stuff. Those ones that I gave all of those descriptive things about, yeah, those are mine, he says. And so we wanted to look at, if we can get to the next slide. Okay, we're in the right spot. Okay, so no, we're not. What's going on with this thing here? We're here. Okay, this is where we are. If we look at this verse in particular, we actually see the main subject we want to deal with, which is adoption, right? So in the third verse, Jacob begins speaking and declaring the goodness of the Most High, telling that he himself was blessed by the Most High. Then he pronounces the covenant made with Abraham and Isaac, the idea that you're going to go down, you're going to go to this land that I give you, and you're going to be multiplied. And then he says, your two sons are mine. Again, he acknowledges their current state of being, their origins, their beginnings, and then he disregards it and nullifies it. Right? You were this, he said, you were that, but now you are mine, he says. So, what does he mean when he says this? What's he talking about? What does he mean? In what respect? In what respect are they his? Again, anybody got any questions, put them over in the comments. If you got any answers to the questions, you can put them over there. Right? We
seemed like they was already his grandson. Because he was taking more.
Well, it's different though. It's a different thing.
They did get his inheritance. I mean, Joseph's inheritance got split between them, but which didn't happen with the other grandkids.
Yeah, it's a totally different thing to be a son and a grandson, right? If as the father, I'm going to give my inheritance to my son, and then depending on what happens with their situation depends on whether the grandson's going to get the inheritance or not, right? It's not like a guaranteed thing. But those two, they jumped over, right? They didn't have that situation anymore, right? So he helps us. He helps us a bit, I would say, when he says, as Reuben and Simeon are mine. So however they are mine, he says, then Ephraim and Manasseh are mine. Right? And so is that supposed to mean then so Ephraim and Manasseh now take the first and second born spots? Because that's what we see with Reuben and Simeon, right? Because that's what he said. When you look at this, you can look at probably multiple versions, and it's all going to give you the same basic thing, where he's saying, as they are mine, Ephraim and Manasseh are mine. So I'm saying, is that is it like a position shift that happens with them, or is it just dealing with the idea of the fact that those are his literal sons that came from his loins and received those particular, the inheritance that goes to sons? They get that because they're just right up there with them. You know what I mean? Like what is it telling us there?
They got expedited to the front of the line.
Yeah. They was able to make it through the little rope into the spot, right?
The rope course.
Yeah. Does he mean just as his natural born sons are mine, so shall these be? Like, is that all? Is that all that he's saying? Is he just saying the way that Reuben is mine and the way that Simeon.
He could have picked other sons.
Yeah, he could have said Joseph.
He could have said,
Just like your daddy's mine, you are mine. Right? He could have said that. But he goes to like these prominent positions, the eldest of all the sons. And it's interesting that he goes to the firstborn, even thinking about how Jacob even was with his sons, right? Where he, in terms of his favorite, we know that Joseph, he was the favorite, right? So when he's given, speaking about this blessing and this transition that's about to happen with these used to be grandsons, and he brings them up to this I guess from a technical standpoint, to the most prominent of positions, technically speaking, right? Forget about favorite wives and all that. From a technical perspective, they've been moved. If we say this means has anything to do with position, this moves them all the way up to the top, right? Reuben and Simeon, right? they got the fast track to the top, right? And so, does anybody have any thoughts or questions or comments about this fast track, that what this could potentially mean? Well, we can get back if you put it in the comments. We'll see over there, right? So if we keep on going here, keep on looking at this. So it says Ephraim and Manasseh as firstborn, right? Because that's what just happened, right? While Jacob does not disinherit Reuben and Simeon, he adopts Joseph's sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, and gives them prioritized standing in inheritance. The adoption practice and formula here are very similar to those attested in the Code of Hammurabi. Additionally, one Ugaritic text features a grandfather adopting his grandson. In one sense, this adoption could be seen as the means by which Joseph is given the double portion of the inheritance due to the firstborn, since two of his sons receive shares from Jacob's inheritance. And so for me, when I look at this, right, to me, I feel like that's the way you think about it, right? The best way I would say to think about this really is not in a negative sense, as if Joseph is getting something taken away from him, right? He's not losing anything. He's actually gaining something, right? And he's receiving this double inheritance, a double portion. So when you think about this, really, it's not as if Joseph's sons are just kind of being snatched away from him, right? I mean, I guess you probably could think about it like that, but I think the proper way to think about it would be the idea of him actually receiving a double portion.
And I mean, and that goes with Joseph's name. May he add, because he's definitely getting an additional portion added to his, his line that the other brothers didn't get.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. So let's keep on looking at this here. Okay, so continuing on, we see, can you read that verse right there for us?
And Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons who Elohim has given me here." And he said, "Please bring them to me that I may bless them."
Okay, so we see over here, we look at this. I want to look at this word, please, which is nah, right? It is a primitive particle of incitement and entreaty, which may usually be rendered I pray, um, I beg you, beseech thee. He's intensely requesting of a thing, right? He eagerly seeks to put a blessing on these children, right? And so he really wants to do this thing, right? Not as if he's doing something for himself, right? It's not as if there's not selfish motivations involved here. This is something he's giving something away, right? The blessing, right? So you want to look at the blessing for a little bit here. We're getting to the meat and bones, but we gotta move some things around a little bit here, right? So when we think about the idea of blessing, right, it's about kneeling down, right? To be or go to a stance in which is on the knees as contrasted with standing on the feet, right? It's a going from an elevated position to a lowered position is in the idea of blessing. So the picture, the thought of it, when you think about it, could be the idea of some like a dad or something kind of bending down to give his child some candy or something, like this big figure who's big, and he's reaching down and he's bending down and he's offering this. Maybe I should say like a piece of fruit or something, right? It's probably better than candy, right? But it's the idea of being upright and then coming down, lowering yourself, and then giving to somebody who's there already, right? So there is this. Let's see what else we got here. Oh wait. Okay, bless another, commend, speak words invoking divine favor with the intent that the object have favorable circumstances or state at a future time, right? So when we think about this, again, this idea of blessing is not a selfish thing. So what he wanted to do for Ephraim and Manasseh, and I guess for actually Joseph, was to command this divine favor towards them, right? So again, it's not like he's adding to his situation, right? It's not like he's sitting up here hoarding all the kids. Even though when we look in the chapter, he says, when you have the rest of the kids, you have those ones is going to be yours. He says in one of the later verses, you have those other ones, the ones that you have from now on, those ones is yours. But these ones over here are mine. But again, we think about what he's doing. He's blessing them, right? He's invoking this divine favor into their life and their situation, right? Okay, so I just went through 2 slides. I'm having the most problems over here. Okay, so this is what is done for the kids. This blessing, right? He's blessing the children, and this is something that they do is blessing the children, because we know that the Most High is for the children. He's for the children, right? This is something that they do. It just so happens that we see now this addition to the ones that are becoming recipients to this particular blessing, adoption that's taking place. But in general, in fact, in the very next chapter, we see where the blessings go for his natural born children. I guess even when you think about what's going on over here in terms of the order of the chapters, in this chapter, right, we have these adopted ones receiving their blessing. That's great. That's like Reuben and Simeon. They're getting moved up to the front of the line. And then once that blessing is done, then now he goes and blesses the rest. Right? In the next chapter, which we'll read, next week. Yeah, will. But I'm saying this idea of blessing the children is something that, this is what we do. I don't know why I'm having so many difficulties here, right? So we're back here. So if we can read, let's read Psalms 127 and 3. Can you read that for us?
Look, children are the inheritance from Yahweh. The fruit of the womb is the reward.
Okay, right. So when we see, we think about children in general, right? They are a reward. They are a blessing in and of themselves, right? And so we see children as being this inherent blessing, and then beyond that, then the parents, they add to that inherent blessing and add this spiritual blessing on them as well, right? And so also read this here. Read these verses here.
And Yahweh spoke to Moshe, saying, and you speak to the children of Israel, saying, my Sabbaths you are to guard. By all means, for it is a sign between me and you throughout your generations. Know that I, Yahweh, am setting you apart. And you shall guard the Sabbath, for it is set apart to you. Everyone who profanes it shall certainly be put to death. For anyone who does work on it, that being shall be cut off from among his people.
Keep going.
6 days work is to be done, and on the seventh it is a Shabbat of rest, set apart to Yahweh. Everyone doing work on the Sabbath day shall certainly be put to death. And the children of Israel shall guard the Sabbath to perform the Sabbath throughout their generations as an everlasting covenant. Between me and the children of Israel, it is a sign forever. For in 6 days Yahweh made the heavens and earth. And on the seventh day he rested and was refreshed.
Okay, so this thing is continued when the children are shown what they're supposed to do and they continue on in the things. Right? And so this thing can't be carried on throughout the generation, lest the next generation keep the thing going, right? And so the children are an important, the most important component to the situation, because we can't even, there is no people if there's no, if the thing stops, right? That's how they talk about the scenes who went over there and they wasn't marrying and having families and stuff, and they just died off, right? Because the generations can't be perpetuated without the children, right? So the children are a very important situation, which, as I said, now makes it necessary for us to, as we see what Yaakov doing over here, blessing the children, right? Offering that blessing towards the children, pushing them off in the right direction, so that these generations can keep these things going, right? We got another more specific verse. If we look over here, it don't want me to. It don't want me to click on it. It don't want me. Here we go. It don't want me to do it. No way. I can't. Okay. Can you read that for me there?
And you shall love Yahweh, your Elohim, with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your might. And these words, and these words which I am commanding you today, shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up.
Okay, very good. So when we look over here, right? When we look over here at what is supposed to be going on, like if we're sitting around doing this, I don't know what the difference between this is and blessing your children, right? If you're showing them the ways in which they are to go all the time in the house, when you walk in, when you lying down, when you rising up, you filling them up with all of this goodness so that they can continue on with this thing and make manifest the promises that the Most High has given to Abraham and his descendants. Is all contingent upon the propagation of of these things, right? And so knowing that, it becomes this thing that we do, which is blessing the children, right? Was you trying to say something? Oh, okay. Okay, so all that being said, looking at the blessing that Jacob gives, is equally important to seek to understand. So not only the fact that he's blessing, but what it is that he's saying in his blessing, right? So we want to look at that. So can you read those verses there for us? Verse 15 down.
And he blessed Joseph and said, Elohim, before whom my fathers Abraham and Isaac walked, the Elohim who shepherded me all of my life unto this day, the angel who redeemed me from all evil, may he bless the boy, and through them let my name be perpetuated, and the name of my fathers Abraham, Isaac, and let them multiply into many in the midst of the earth.
Okay, very good. That was verses 15 through 16 of our chapter 48. Okay, so a little bit of delay. Okay, so this is about, we look at that, right? This is about having more children, multiplying, right? This is about being fruitful and multiplying, right? Reproducing, right? What's already been started, right? That was the first thing that they even like. That was the main problem. The thing that was holding back in the very beginning, right? With Sarah and Abraham was even the idea of being a nation and multiplying, right? So that's a key component, that this whole thing that began with the multiplication of the family, it began with that, but the continuance of it, right? And so Jacob spoke of his relationship with the Almighty, right? His goings and comings, right? He says he walked with Elohim since my duration. He said he walked with him again. That's dealing with his goings and his comings, right? When he goes, the Most High is with him. When he comes, the Most High is with him, right? He's talking about the relationship that he has with the Father. When we look, the King James says the Elohim who fed me all day long, or all my life, or since my duration, who fed me. Other versions say shepherded, which probably makes more sense in light of the Hebrew word, that word that's translated as shepherded in the verse that we read is ra'ah, which means to tend a flock, that is pasture, and transitively to graze. So we could say it's right to say feed, right? But there's more involved in it if we think about it in what this is in terms of shepherding, right? Because it's one thing to feed, and then it's kind of more descriptive if we think about it in the idea of shepherding. Right? Okay, so it says here, but what is also telling us in terms of just not just feeding, but it's of the quality of the relationship between Jacob and the Almighty. The Most High fed Jacob as a shepherd would, right? He leads him to the food, right? He leads him to the water, right? He provides for all of his needs, right? So if you just say fed is one thing, but if the Most High is taking care of each and every component that is incorporated in the idea of feeding, I think that is a fuller understanding of the what's actually going on. We think about this idea of shepherding, right? And so he's saying that the Most High, I walk with the Most High. My comings and goings is about being with the Most High, right? He is my shepherd, right? He's there with me. He leads me to the food. He shows me where the water's at. He dips in the well and pulls the water up and puts it down and pours it in a trough so I can sit there and drink it, right? All of these things, right?
And protection is a big part of that as well.
Exactly. The shepherd is a protector, right? He got that staff. If some things is coming around, so feed. That's what I'm saying. Feed is a word, and it's not wrong. But if we think about the idea of shepherding rather than feeding, because that protection piece is also incorporated, because with that staff, there's wolves and things coming around, and he's chasing them away. He's letting you be in a safe environment so that you can feed and drink and all these other things. Absolutely.
I was thinking about you with your plants and you covered them up.
I know. You're making me sad even just bringing that up, actually.
You threatened the little groundhog.
I know. It's hard when you have something that you have to take care of and protect, and you put all of this time and energy into the growth of a thing, and then these things come along and try to thwart your mission, right? But all of these things are included in this whole idea of shepherd, and this is what Jacob is saying, that the Almighty is to him, that he wants the Almighty to be all of that and more to Ephraim and Manasseh. I don't know what's going on with this thing. Is that the next one? Yeah. Okay, so, and he says, and the angel who redeemed me from all evil. Right? So you already have the aspect of the shepherd, who also is the idea of protection is incorporated in the idea of being a shepherd. And then also above that, right, it says the angel who redeemed me from all evil, the one who paid my debts and made it possible to move in safety, right? The word that we had highlighted back in the verse was redeemed, right? And redeeming has to do with the payment of debts, right? And so these things that are held against me are paid for and taken care of. I'm able to move around freely without any debts hanging over me. I'm able to move in safety, right? And so all of these things now, all of these things that Jacob's sitting up here talking about are all the things and blessings that he enjoyed in his life with his relationship with the Most High. And he's saying, all that stuff I want for you, Ephraim and Manasseh, to also have this stuff too, right? So that one, the one who has done all that stuff for me, may he bend down and offer goodness to these boys, right? That's blessing, right? He's asking for the one who did all of that stuff for him, who was able to walk with him and shepherd him and be a redeemer for him and keep him from evil. May that one bend down and offer that goodness to these boys, Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay. Can you read verse 16 there for me?
And through them let my name be perpetuated, and the name of my fathers, Abraham and Isaac, and let them multiply into many in the midst of the earth.
Okay, right. So when we see that verse right there, understanding what's going on is, again, we have the aspect of the physical aspect of more people being made, created, right? But beyond that, we see the idea of all of the things that go along with the foundations of the family also being incorporated in the multiplicity of the people, right? So it's not just about just having seed, but this seed being able to be connected with the name that has been made by the fathers, Abraham, Isaac, and now Jacob, right? And so all of these things are incorporated in this whole idea of this this multiplying, right? It's not just about having a bunch of heirs, right? But it's about having these heirs that are connected to the Most High, and then they're connecting their heirs also to the Most High in the same way, if not more so than the ones before. Okay. All right. Let's see here. Next slide. Okay. So, okay. Can you read these verses here for us?
When Joseph saw that his father put his right hand on the head of Ephraim, he was displeased, and he took hold of his father's hand to remove it from the head of Ephraim over the head of Manasseh. And Joseph said to his father, "Not so, my father, because this one is the firstborn. Put your right hand upon his head."
Okay, so when we think about what's going on over here, when we see that from the reading that Joseph brought his two sons to his father, and kind of from the text, it's like he set them on his knee, sitting in front of Jacob. And so Joseph put them on his knee in such a way that if Jacob reached out his right hand, it would reach to the firstborn son. But what Jacob actually does is crosses his hands over, and he puts his right hand on the second-born son, right? And so Joseph's over here sitting up here trying to correct them and everything. And again, because of the fact that he's up in age and his eyes are weak, kind of the same situation that Jacob had with his father, the exact same situation actually, in terms of him being old and doing this blessing and not able to see who he's blessing. But so we see over here that Joseph is wanting for the natural firstborn son to get that right hand blessing. And so we want to look at that a little bit, this whole idea of this whole right hand blessing, that he thought that his father did by mistake. If I can get this. Let's see if I can get this to move to the next slide here. Okay, so there was great significance on the right hand, right? And that right hand blessing, right? So he wanted that right hand blessing to be right. Right? He didn't want that right hand blessing to go to the wrong one, right? Because again, there's great significance on the right hand blessing, right? So let's look at this a little bit here, right? The right hand is a place of honor, right? If you was in the, I don't know how we found out about it, but you wasn't giving nobody no left hand dap, right? I don't know how we found out about this whole right hand with honor thing, but that thing has been in effect even until this day, right? If somebody reached out their left hand to you, I don't even know what they're doing with that left hand. I don't know what they're doing, right? Because right hand is what we doing over here, right? I gotta teach my kids these things, Okay, so right. Can you read Psalms 110 and 1 right there?
A declaration of Yahweh to my Lord. Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool.
Okay, so think about what this means for Yeshua. We're talking about the idea of Yeshua sitting at the right hand of the Father. And so when we think about that, it's not as if we're talking about like the Most High sitting at the throne, and then Yeshua, like standing next to him, right? It's a thought process, it's an idea, it's a concept of that place of honor, and it's a concept of the idea of strength and honor that's associated. So it's speaking to the position of the one who's on the right hand, right? So it's giving you a picture, and it's giving it to you like this, but it's not literal in terms of the idea of Yahweh sitting in a chair and then next to him is Yeshua. It's showing you the prominence, the preeminence of Yeshua and who he is, to say that he's on the right hand of the Most High. In fact, when we look in the New Testament, when we see one of the ways that the Pharisees and all that went to challenge Yeshua was actually with this verse right here. And so when he puts himself in this verse over here, they're looking at this like this is blasphemy, what you're talking about, because to sit at the right hand of the Father is basically calling yourself a Elohim, right? So they understood the proper understanding of the idea of this whole idea of sitting on the right hand, right? So we see over here where this is an example of this the preeminence that exists with this whole right hand situation. Okay, so Mark 16 and 19. Can you read that?
Then indeed, after the master had spoken to them, he was received up into the heaven and sat down at the right hand of Elohim.
Okay, right. So this here is Yeshua going back to the Father, right? Yeshua being raised, he rose from the dead. He went back to the Father, sent back the Spirit, right? And then it says, where is he at? And sat down at the right hand of Elohim. This is speaking to a position of honor, right? Okay, what's verse 19 say here?
But his father refused and said, I know, my son, I know. He also becomes a people, and he also is great. And yet his younger brother is greater than he, and his seed is to become the completeness of the nations.
Okay, so like in many situations in scripture with Israel in general, we see where the younger actually receives a greater blessing than the older, right? It's happening multiple ways over here because, well, first of all, we're talking about Joseph, who's like the next of the last of the sons to begin with, and he's getting this double blessing where his two sons are being added to the inheritance of his father, and then the younger of those two sons is being placed in the position of firstborn when he himself is 11th born, right? So his sons supersede his own position, right? And we look with Jacob and Esau. Jacob and Esau is the same way, where you have the younger is greater than the older, right? Where this pattern really kind of continues throughout. So we see over here where again Jacob corrects Joseph, who tried to correct him. He's up here trying to don't be up here trying to correct me. I know what's what. I may not be able to see that good, but I know what I'm doing over here, right? the his younger brother is greater than he, right? He gonna be great. He's gonna be great. Don't you worry. But his younger brother is going to be greater than he, right? And his seed, he says, is to become the fullness or the fullness. This version says completeness. The other versions say fullness of the nations. Yeah. I just spoke to one of the rabbis from the fullness of the nations just the other day, right? So let's look at this over here. Let me go to the next slide. Because again, we're talking about the actual blessing that's given to the sons Ephraim and Manasseh, right? So the one's gonna be great. Manasseh, he's gonna be great, right? But Ephraim over here is going to be the fullness of the nations, right? So the nations over here, that word is goy. So let's see here. People, nations, a large group based on various culture, physical, geographical ties. It's usually translated as Gentiles, nations other than Israel. associated with or being uncultured, pagan, or heathen. Okay, so interestingly enough, when we think about what actually happens with Israel in throughout the history, of Israel, where we have the separation of the two nations, right? And we have the southern and the northern kingdom. The southern kingdom being mainly Judah, right, and Benjamin and Levi, and the northern kingdom, which is literally called what? Ephraim, right? Or Israel, right? And so when we think about Israel, the northern kingdom, or Ephraim, right, who gets conquered and gets dispersed throughout the lands and to never return, right? We can see how, when we look at that, how actually the fullness of these nations can literally take place. We have Israel actually literally being scattered all over the place, right? And then when that spirit then begins to go out and awaken the people and bring life into the physical Israel, then all of the implications and the repercussions that will happen as a result of that. Where you had the people, they're all over the place. They're mixed with all kinds of different peoples. But when they come regathered, now they have this connection now to these other peoples for thousands of years, right? But these people all being interconnected and coming together, where we look at this verse where it's almost like this blessing that's to happen, that's prophetic, right? And then even we even think about the idea of what's even going on here, right? Where we have like this thing we're talking about is this adoption process, this process of taking these ones that are not sons and making them be sons. Here, this is an example of them actually being grandsons. But the point is that they're not sons, and they're being made into sons, and they're being also above that, being given this prominent position. They're being treated in a way that's not connected to who they are from a physical perspective, right? It's just a blessing that didn't have nothing to do with them. It had everything to do with their father. And so it's interesting that we see this great blessing that's going forth to the sons of Joseph. And then again, just thinking about, the actual the thing that he's actually saying, the literal blessing that he's given to them. Okay, so let's keep on looking here. Get my screen together. Trying to get it go. Oh, here we go. Okay, so let's see here. Okay, verse 20. Can you read for us verse 20?
And so he blessed them that day, saying, through you, Israel, shall pronounce blessings, saying, may Elohim make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh.
Okay, now, so this is something that is a blessing in and of itself. So he gives this blessing to Ephraim and Manasseh in terms of being these ones who will walk with the Most High, who will be fed by the Most High, who will be shepherded and who will be protected from evil by the Most High, and who will multiply and continue in the growing of the people called Israel. He gives them this great blessing, right? And then look what he says: through you, Israel shall pronounce. So Israel's supposed to say this. This is like a blessing that's given to the Israel now. May Elohim make you like Ephraim and like Manasseh. This is a blessing that we bless. Like it's a blessing that you bless people with. May you be like Ephraim and Manasseh. You know, when we go through our little thing that we do on Shabbat, you know, this is how we bless the children. We say, may you be like Ephraim and Manasseh. So we saying then, why? Why? What's this even mean? Like, what do this even mean? Like, why is that even a blessing? Like, what do it mean to say that? May you be like Ephraim and Manasseh. Why? What's the thing that we learn from this? What's the thing that we see within this that's even something that we look to? Like if somebody was to say, may you be like the most prosperous person in the world, like that's something that's more concrete to me. I understand it. Like
if you're talking to like somebody in like a sports field,
may you be like Michael Jordan. You know what I mean? Yeah, or something. Like you could think about, oh, he's a really good basketball player and all like this. Like you could think about all these things. Like, but if the blessing is may you be like Ephraim and Manasseh, then to understand what the blessing is, we got to understand what's so special about these guys for it even to mean anything to us, right? But I think that the specialness is what we've been talking about all this time. Is the fact that they're receiving this blessing, right? That has nothing to do. It's not like they went somewhere and they did like 5 things to receive you know what it is that they're receiving. And this is like some kind of an award that they're receiving as a result of their conduct, right? This is something that's being bestowed upon them as a result of the favor that was with their father. They had nothing to do with them, right? But as a result of that, they received this great blessing. They received this adoption, right? They went from the place of not being sons, and then they became sons, right? They went from this place of and again, when you think about it, they're sons from strange woman. They're sons from this Egyptian woman. Right? He's off in Egypt. He didn't even find a wife from the homeland like his fathers did. He found a wife where he was at with this Egyptian woman. Huh? Yeah, he was probably given. She was probably raised up to be a governor's wife. Like that was her whole statue. Her whole stature in life was just built on being a governor's wife her whole life, right? But Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, they all found their wives from among their people. But this one, Joseph, he had this Egyptian wife, and then the seed of that then supersedes his own self and his brothers. But what that is so we talking about adoption, right? That's adoption when we look at that. So let's look at this a little bit, right? So most cultures had some practice akin to adoption. Moses, a slave, was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter in Egypt. The Nuzu tablets reveal a custom whereby a childless couple could adopt a son who would serve them in life and be their heir in death. This is obviously some Egyptian thing, right? Hebrew laws did not include one that concerned adoption, and the Greek word for adoption does not occur in the Septuagint. This was probably due to the law of levirate marriage, which provided a way for a family to have heirs to inherit the family property. Right? So in Israel, we didn't do this kind of a thing in general speaking. If you couldn't have any children, it wasn't like you was going to go out and get another somebody to take the childless position in your family. You was just going to go find another wife and try to make another one. Or like it says over here, the levirate marriage was when the husband was to die with no heirs, and the wife is left, so one of the husband's brothers will come and give the the wife, his sister-in-law, a heir.
We also see with Abraham that if he didn't have any sons, he was going to give it all to his servant Eliezer.
Right, you do see that situation, right? But that was something that Abraham was going to do, which I guess would have been the same. It would have conceptually been like, that transference of the heirs, but built into the codified law of Israel, you don't have that kind of a situation. But we did, that's a good point, bring up the potential for that, something like that to have happened with Abraham. He tried to do it, but the Most High was like, no, that's not going to be like that. Okay. Okay, we'll go to the next slide here. All right, so hold on, let me just make sure this is the next slide. Okay, it wasn't. Skip one. Okay, polygamy may also have been another way to overcome the problems of childlessness. Adoption was a very common aspect of Greco-Roman life, and this is the background of the New Testament concept. This concept, again, is not really something that we see for the most part in the Old Testament times. Childless couples would often adopt a son who then became their heir. Even if the adopted son had living biological parents, they had no more claim over him after the adoption had taken place. Often parents were willing to let their sons be adopted by another family if it meant a better life. Right? So we see from a general perspective, this isn't something that we saw going on with Israel, unless we look back and see what happened over here with Ephraim and Manasseh.
But that's a huge deal, right? Because I mean,
It is. It is. So I'm saying that it's this thing that wasn't necessarily part of the culture, but we can look back to a huge example where not only so, but in a blessing that we're to give to the children of Israel is it says their name. May you be like Ephraim and Manasseh, and we're sitting up here figuring out what is it about Ephraim and Manasseh that's just so special. And I'm saying that the thing that's just so special is this idea of adoption. This concept that's really a foreign concept in generally speaking, in the Hebrew culture. Okay, so Paul is really the only one to speak on this idea, besides the picture that we see with Ephraim and Manasseh. But he mentions it in regards to the nation of Israel. So can we read this here, Romans 3-5? I mean, Romans 9:3-5.
For I myself could have wished to be banished from Messiah for the sake of my brothers, my relatives, according to the flesh, who are the children of Israel, to whom is the adoption and the esteem and the covenants and the giving of Torah, and the worship of the promises, and the worship and the promises, whose are the fathers, and from whom is the Messiah according to the flesh, who is over all. Elohim blessed forever. Amen.
Okay, so when we look over here, right, talking about who are the children of Israel, to whom is the adoption. When we think about this idea of Israel, the nation of Israel, and being adopted, we talking about the idea of Israel being made sons to the Most High, when Israel was in a situation where they wasn't sons, right? So taking Israel from a situation now, from a spiritual perspective, where Israel wasn't a son, where now they become sons. It says, to whom is the adoption and the glory and the covenants and the giving of the Torah and the worship and the promises. All of this is in Messiah. Right? So over here, we see here Paul using this word again. The concept is foreign, really, to the Hebrew culture. But over here, the idea that he's trying to bring forth is understanding the fact that Israel becomes in this situation where Israel is separated from the Most High, and Israel needs a savior to come. And one of the things that the Savior does is connect us back to the Father. And again, we see Paul using this concept here, this idea of adoption, this idea of you becoming something that you wasn't before. And that's easy for us to understand when we think about the state that, we are in outside of the Father, right? So let's look at this other thing, right? So as well, so we just looked at how that over there was talking about Israel really as a nation, but as well as individuals, as well as we could think of individuals, not just a nation, but individuals through Messiah. So Ephesians 1:3-5. Can you read Ephesians 1:3-5 right there?
Blessed be Elohim, the Father of our Master Yeshua Messiah, who has blessed us with every spiritual blessing in the heavenlies. In the heavenlies in Messiah, even as he chose us in him before the foundations of the world, that we should be set apart and blameless before him in love, having previously ordained us to the adoption as sons through Yeshua Messiah to himself, according to the good pleasure of his desire.
Okay, so if we sit up here and connect these things over here, if it says ordained us to adoption as sons through Messiah to himself, then we can't separate this idea from Messiah, right? Because it says we're adopted as sons through Messiah. So this idea of adoption, or us being connected back to Messiah, whether we talk about from a national perspective or as an individual perspective, is all happens through Messiah. So we had to have Messiah so that we could be adopted as sons. So again, if we look backwards now, if we think about this whole idea of and he will make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. The way that he's going to make you like Ephraim and Manasseh is by adopting you. And the only way that he's going to adopt you is through Yeshua.
There was a question about the on the thing about the commandments, as far as being a father to the fatherless, those who don't have a father.
Yeah.
And how that compares to adoption.
When you think about taking care of orphans or what have you, it doesn't necessarily include inheritances, right? And so we can think about the idea that we are supposed to take care of orphans, but it's not the same thing as having them actually be part of your family, where they even at like when we talk about Ephraim and Manasseh, where they're overtaking the spots in the families, right? So it's one thing to take somebody in, like if you had a stranger, you brought a stranger into your home, that your inheritance didn't go to the stranger, right? And so we can think about the idea and understand that within Torah makes provisions for those who don't have anybody to help them. But there's a difference when we think about the idea of adoption, because now we're talking about a transference of the inheritance, right? So it's a fuller situation that you're dealing with, with that.
Now,
but that's a good question.
If the person who takes that role don't have any kids, they may give to that person, or they may just want to give to that person just because they love them. But if there's no commandment towards or precedent towards the giving of inheritance.
Well, you wasn't supposed to let your inheritance go outside of your clan, your family, like whichever tribe you was connected to. So theoretically speaking, yeah, so if they was in the same tribe, they could get the inheritance. But if you wasn't in the same tribe, then you wasn't supposed to give that inheritance to somebody that was outside of the tribe. But again, when we think about what this blessing is that lies within the idea of may you be like Ephraim and Manasseh, we can look at this and think about this now from a spiritual perspective and say that when we think about the idea of may you be like Ephraim and Manasseh, the idea that goes along with that is that may you be adopted by the Father and become a son and receive a place of preeminence at no that it doesn't have anything to do with you, but it has everything to do with the blesser, right? The blesser is the one that's deciding to put you in a particular position. This verse over here that we was looking at talks about, it says, in love having previously ordained us, right? So when we look at our
I mean, is it like how Joseph was the favorite?
Yeah.
and being like Ephraim and Manasseh is kind of being like the favorite on steroids, basically. Like, you know what I mean? Because he was already the favorite, and now he's going to get a double portion of being, the favorite. And this is kind of the fruit of that whole getting that double portion thing.
Yeah. Yes. Yes. So it's just about just receiving an abundance of goodness. Yes, based off of favor that's promised before you.
Mm-hmm. It had nothing to do. He didn't even know them. He just met them.
Yeah.
And, he didn't even know them.
Yeah.
He didn't really know their names until they came there.
Right. It would for this chapter is really the meeting. It's the meeting and the blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh.
And they got a big takeaway.
Yeah, huge. Okay. What else we got over here? Let me see if I can get this. Go to the next slide here. Okay, let's look at Galatians 4:4-6. Let's read that.
But when the completion of the time came, Elohim sent forth his son, born of a woman, born under Torah, to redeem those who were under Torah, in order to receive the adoption as sons. And because you are sons, Elohim has set you forth the spirit of his son into your hearts, crying, Abba, Father.
Yes. Okay, so again, when we think about this idea of adoption, I think it's important to understand that conceptually speaking, in general, it wasn't something that we did, right? And so when we see Paul introducing this idea, it's something that is specific to Yeshua and what Yeshua has done and is doing for his people, right? And so again, when we look back at Ephraim and Manasseh and we ask the question why this blessing, what's so special about this blessing, the thing that's so special about this blessing is that it points us forward to our adoption in the Father through Yeshua. Right? Because we look over at this verse over here, we see this idea of it says, in order to receive adoption as sons. This thing that we receive from Messiah puts us in the place to be able to call the Most High Father. Right? This thing that we receive from Yeshua enables us to be called sons of the true and living Elohim. Right? This idea of adoption. Right? It's a key component in the gospel. Right? It's a key component. It's a key blessing that Yeshua provides for us. He allows for us to be called sons of Elohim through the work that he did. Our faith in the work that he did brings us to this position, this idea of adoption that were pictured and pointed to all the way back at the very beginnings of Israel with Ephraim and Manasseh. Okay, let's look at another verse over here. I believe the next verse is in Romans. It's a little bit of a delay on my let me just see that was Romans. Oh, this is the last slide here. Romans 8:14 through 17. Can you read that for us?
For as many as are led by the Spirit of Elohim, these are the sons of Elohim. For you did not receive the spirit of bondage again to fear, but you received the spirit of adoption, by whom we cry out, Abba, Father. The Spirit himself bears witness with our spirit that we are children of Elohim. And if children, also heirs, truly heirs of Elohim, and co-heirs with Messiah, if indeed we suffer with him, in order that we also be exalted together.
Okay, very good. So again, we look over here. The thing that connects us to this adoption is Yeshua. That's the way we're called sons. It's not like we're not automatic called sons. We're not just called sons just by knowing that we're Israel. We're called sons through faith in Messiah. We're called sons by actually receiving the Ruach HaKodesh and then walking in that Ruach HaKodesh. And when that spirit that's inside of us, as through faith in Yeshua, that spirit that's inside of us bears witness with Elohim, and then we know that we are then co-heirs with Messiah, right? Through Messiah. And so again, when we think about this idea of being sons, this is it's a spiritual thing that happens, right? And we have to understand, how it is that we become connected to the Most High, right? We saw in the scriptures that's necessary for the nation to be connected to the Most High through adoption. We see also that individuals are to be connected through adoption, through Messiah, and it's the only way to be connected is through Messiah, right? And so if we were to say, then we look back at the verses that we're looking at, the scriptures at hand, and understand this great blessing that is to be given to the children of Israel. May Elohim make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. This thing is indeed a prophetic blessing, because the way that we can be like Ephraim and Manasseh is to enjoy the adoption into Israel that the Most High provides through his son, Yeshua HaMashiach. Okay? All right. Does anybody have any thoughts or questions or comments?
Good lesson. Hallelujah.
Okay. All right. So that being said, may Elohim make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. And we will, for now, be done for today. Yahweh will be back next week on Shabbat, continuing with our Torah portion. And so, yes. Don't forget to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel, tell all your friends. Thank you very much. All right. Okay. Shabbat shalom.
Shabbat shalom.
Shalom.